Hi, welcome to BariNation, where we support the bariatric community with humor, humility, and honesty.
You've just tuned into a podcast that welcomes you into a community, a resource center, and a safe place that powers your journey towards personal wellness.
Our goal is you leave us today feeling hopeful, inspired, and ready to live your best bariatric life.
Hi, friends. Welcome back to the BariNation podcast. Today, we have the honor of talking with one of our most favorite humans on the planet, Dr. Eric Smith from the Kentucky Bariatric Institute. Hi, Dr. Smith.
Hey, how are you guys?
Excellent. We are very excited to talk to you about this topic. It is hot on the nation's mind. It is in the news. And we just spent about 3 weeks in the BariNation membership community, really deep diving into ultra-processed foods and gut health. We know that you are a huge advocate for this. You want people to become more educated about what is in our food and what those things could be doing in our bodies in a longer bariatric journey. So if you have been wondering about ultra-processed foods or the things that are going into the foods that we're eating, this episode is absolutely for you.
Yeah, it's something very near and dear to my heart. And I think it's something that needs more awareness right now. It probably has as much awareness as it's ever had, politically, in the media, every which way you can look, which is good. But anytime something gets really popular, that usually means that 51% of the people are 100% behind it and 49% of the people are completely against it. Sometimes it has to do with whose mouth it comes out of, and sometimes it doesn't matter. So I do think that regardless of who's saying it, we need to talk about the subject matter because it matters. It really, really matters.
Mm-hmm. And maybe that's a good place to start. I know Natalie and Jason and myself, we have really made a pivot or a shift to be more whole food inclusive in our diets. But where did this passion of yours develop from? Why is this top of your mind now?
I'll try to be concise in this story, but I think the story is important that really got my wheels turning. I think for years, as a bariatric surgeon, people are just so confused on how to eat, and I think that for years, what happens is when you have a patient who comes in and they even admit that they're struggling with their diet or they're not always compliant with their diet. I mean, more often than not, patients will be honest with you about that. Mm-hmm. And, we always just send them to the dietitian. Go talk to the dietitian. They'll help you again. And, I could tell that's not working, but I also think people would see if I had $1 for every time somebody would ask me over the years or now, they'll send me a message in social media. Hey, doc, what's the best way to eat? Don't you have your top diet plan? These other doctors, they sell their diet plan. I'm like, no, there is not a top diet plan. Number one, I think you have to find something you can be compliant with, and everything works differently for people. But I also started noticing that, you would see somebody who eats vegan and they're doing great. And then you see somebody who eats a carnivore diet and they're doing great. And you have somebody else that's doing paleo and you're just you're so confused on where to start. And I always felt bad for people because they're really trying, but they don't know where to start. And, so it really got me thinking about the way that our food climate has shifted over the years. And about, over a year and a half ago, I was introduced to a guy by the name of Todd Wagner. Good friend of mine who works with Todd. It was at a Kentucky football game, and my friend Alan said, I want you to meet Todd. He wants to meet you. I've told him what you do, and I think you're going to be really interested to hear what his passion is. Well, right before I meet Todd, I find out Todd is Mark Cuban's business partner. So he and Mark started broadcast.com years ago, which is a really cool story, sold it to Yahoo for like $5 billion. They really came up with the first way to stream sporting events. Now you can stream anything, right? They were really the first streaming service. And so the last thing I thought of talking to Todd was going to be something connected with me. And I was sitting there talking to Todd and he looked at me and he said, do you ever feel like your patients don't have a fighting chance no matter how hard they try? And I'm like, explain that to me. And he says, well, so I am kind of on this mission. And he started telling me about, he founded a nonprofit organization called Food Fight USA. And he said, I'm a chronic migraine sufferer. And I noticed every time I would go to Europe, I could eat anything I wanted to. I could eat all the pizza I wanted. I could eat pasta. I could drink the wine over there. And I had no migraines. And I started, he has a production company as well, Magnolia Pictures. And not to throw a name out there. And he literally apologized. He said, I hope you don't think I'm throwing a name around. But he said, I was actually staying with George Clooney and I asked him that same question. And he said, yeah, there's something to it. It's the food here versus back home. And it really kind of started this whole passion that he had about trying to figure out, what is in our food here and why is the laws in other countries so different than they are here in the United States? Why are we allowed to put things in our food here and we don't? And why are we eating the same food here, but it's made completely different than it is in other countries as well? And he kind of went down this rabbit hole. And long story short, he just says, I've done a lot of great things in my life. And he's like, but I want to leave a legacy and I want to make an impact on our food system. And he says, but I was really intrigued to talk to you because I know what you treat every single day. And I said, no, it's so true. You're on to something because I do feel like my patients are trying. They don't know where to start. And sometimes they're eating things that they think are better options for them. And it's just derailing them. Mm-hmm. So I started doing a lot of research myself on this whole initiative. I was always curious about it, but it really kind of got my wheels turning. And I was just shocked at so many things. I don't even know where to start, some of the statistics. But the moral of the story is, as I started digging, and you all have probably heard this by now because there's so much attention to it, years and years ago when big tobacco got blown up, R.J. Reynolds and all the tobacco industry, they started buying up the food companies. Mm-hmm. And what they did is they brought their chemist with them. Now, I will say that right now, these food companies aren't owned by big tobacco anymore. They ultimately had to sell them. But they took their game plan from tobacco and they employed it or turned it into their game plan at big food. And instead of calling things addictive like they did on the tobacco side, they just call things hyper-palatable. Look it up. You can chat GPT it. You can Google it. It's a strategy that they do. And I think what we have to be aware of is anytime we are buying food, it's a business. And so, I don't blame somebody for having a business, but there's full intent behind most of these large food companies to create foods that sell. And the only way you sell lots of it is you make people want more of it. So the whole topic of ultra processed foods, obviously awareness of food dyes and things like that, it's something that is really, really personal to me because I have watched over the years and I've paid closer attention after that conversation, how people are trying to replace things that they used to eat with things that are marketed to them to be high protein, low calorie, low fat, and all it's doing is derailing them further.
Absolutely. As you were talking, I thought about my days at Jenny Craig, right? I mean, Jenny Craig, the entire premise is you eat their food, right, and you'll lose weight. And I remember, I was very young too, so that comes into play. But I remember thinking, wow, this cheesecake that's supposedly 100 calories is so good. I could eat 5 of them and I would eat my entire week's worth of those cheesecake slices, right, in one day because I was like, these are so good. I'm just going to lose all this weight. No, well, okay, yeah, but like you ate all of them in one day. Yeah. But that's what it makes me think of. It makes me think of protein bars or, those things that we really do think, oh, this is going to be the thing that helps me. When in reality, it's like we say it all the time in BariNation, on the podcast, in the community, whole foods are really the way to go, as whole as we can get. And it's still frustrating that, higher protein pastas, those are still genetically made, right? Like, or altered. All of it, we can't escape it. It really does feel suffocating.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think where we have to start is we have to educate ourselves about what we put in our body. I think we have to draw a line in the sand and say, how can we be so concerned with the things that we put in our environment, but we negate the things that we put in our body? We're so worried about the environment around us, and we forget our body is our environment.
Yeah.
This is our first environment.
Yep.
The place that we live is our second environment.
Yeah.
And people want to negate that. And yes, as a bariatric surgeon, as a bariatric specialist, it is ultimately calories in, calories out. You physically can't so-called gain weight on a short-term scale if you're not exceeding the calories your body requires. But the problem is if we just create a calorie deficit, we, number one, know what happens if we don't get adequate protein to maintain muscle mass, what that does to our metabolism. We've talked about those things before.
Mm-hmm.
But more importantly is, like you said, in the long run, what happens if we're reducing our calories, but we're putting so many things in our food? Yeah. Are we playing by the rules long term? Diets aren't short term. A diet isn't a short-term thing to help you lose weight. A diet is a way of life of how you feed your body. And so can you sustain eating a calorie deficit for the rest of your life with a ton of artificial sweeteners and ultra-processed foods and fillers and things like that? That's the ultimate question. And no one can take a study and say, yes, you can, because they've never proven that.
Yeah. And as bariatric patients, right, we are told from everybody, right? Like, these are products that are going to help you, right? These are products that you need, which is true, but usually for a very short amount of time. As your body's recovering from surgery, eating whole foods can be really actually detrimental, right? And you have to go through this progression. But after we get there, no, whole food is the way to go, but we feel so lost, or we feel so confused because we think that we're supposed to be eating these foods because they're marketed to us as they're high protein and they're going to help us recover and do all of this stuff. But that's not really good for us in the long run. And what our body does with those calories that have come from ultra processed foods might be different than what our body's going to do from calories that come to us from whole food.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right. The reason whole foods may be off limit at the beginning after surgery is it's just more of a texture thing. You theoretically could eat whole foods. You would just need to change the consistency of the food, in order to get it through your new staple line, your new suture line, or anything like that. Whole foods will never, ever, ever be bad for anybody. But yes, eating solid meat 3 weeks after surgery could be dangerous, right?
Yeah.
And so finding a way, and yes, it's hard to pack nutrition into small amounts, especially when you can only hold a small amount of volume, and you're trying to maximize what I always say, you're trying to maximize your real estate. Mm-hmm. You want nothing to fill that real estate up that doesn't have nutritional value.
Yeah.
But so, I kind of did this habit challenge this year. About each month, we're kind of posing a habit that we want you to challenge to start adopting a habit. And the very first one we did was whole foods. And, I challenged people, try to get 80% of your food from whole food. And
Mm-hmm.
how do you know if it's whole food? It should have one ingredient in it. Now, it doesn't mean you can't make a meal that has 5 ingredients in it because you've combined 5 whole foods, right? But, so many times people scare, especially weight loss surgery patients or just people trying to lose weight in general, fruits. Oh, it's got sugar in it. No, I have no problem if you want to drink some orange juice down the road. Drink some orange juice, but squeeze an orange.
Mm-hmm.
Because I promise you, any bottle that says 100% orange juice is not 100% orange juice. It's just not.
Yeah.
They don't play by the rules. The rules are so lax. And so, an egg has egg in it. Beef has beef in it. We could go on and on. And I used the example in the post that, well, what if you want to go through Chick-fil-A and you want to grab a grilled chicken sandwich, ditch the bread, and eat the piece of grilled chicken? Well, guess what? 47 ingredients. Just a piece of grilled chicken, according to them, 47 ingredients. That's not whole food. And so here's what's tough. The person who makes the commitment that says, I'm going to get rid of the bread. I'm not going to put stuff on it. I'm not going to eat the breaded chicken. I don't want to be critical of that person making those concessions, but we have to be transparent with people and make them realize it's not what you think it is.
Yeah.
And then the big question becomes, well, what is it doing to me? If it's not high in calorie, then how's it hurting me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I just think about the literacy that I've gained, like what you're saying, going to Chick-fil-A and getting the grilled patty, right? It's not that it's bad, right? I just want to put that out here. Like Absolutely. This conversation is not, if you're listening and you're like, well, I do that, right? No one here is saying, I mean, I went to McDonald's yesterday, it happens. But I think it's the literacy that we're really talking about, is understanding and not letting social media, marketing, like all of that get in the way of, or tricking ourselves into thinking this is a whole food. Right. And that's where the last year, I have a chronic illness that flares really easily. I've talked to April and Jason about this a lot. There are some things that just trigger my body to go into like this allergy related type thing. And I've had to really pare down in the last year what I eat every day, because I don't know what's going to trigger me. But that has forced me into being literate with what I'm eating. Am I actually getting a whole food, or is this 47 ingredients in a chicken patty?
Exactly. Yep. And the one thing that I always loved about when I met Todd, and what they've always said, is he's like, look, I'm not trying to take the freedoms away from people. I'm not trying to say that we shouldn't have the option to buy ultra processed food, but we need to be honest about it. And we need to be fully transparent about what is in these foods and what happens to them, or what happens to your body when you eat them. And here's the thing, and he uses this example all the time. If all three of us decide that we're going to hang out for the weekend and we're going to smoke 5 cigarettes, we are not getting lung cancer. I'm here to tell you, I'm not telling you to go smoke, but if you want to smoke 5 cigarettes and that's the only cigarettes you smoke, you're not getting lung cancer from that. And if you get lung cancer years down the road, it wasn't because of those 5 cigarettes. I'm here to promise you that's the case. So when we start hearing people fight over semantics about, oh, well, this much artificial sweetener, it takes this amount to cause this problem, or it takes this much food dye to cause this problem, and it's in a small amount. No one has studied the compounding effects of that over and over and over again. And when you're eating foods that have these products in them, are you keeping tally of it? Are you writing down every time you do it? 5 cigarettes won't give you lung cancer, but cigarettes consistently over a period of time absolutely will. And so why should we make a concession for, well, it would take a lot of this food dye to give me cancer?
Yeah.
So why would we want it at all? The other thing we have to be aware of is all the products in our food are technically legally allowed to be deemed safe by the food companies themselves. And that was a loophole years ago when things like vinegar and things like that came out, and they really were baking soda, and they were trying to just say, okay, these things aren't harmful. It has been a loophole that they have gotten around to be able to say, we believe it's safe. It is not tested by anyone. 90% of the products in our food is not tested by the FDA, is not looked at by an unbiased view. The company who put it there is allowed to say this is safe.
I'm sorry. I'm just going to need to repeat this out loud to myself so my brain understands it. You're telling me that the companies that manufacture food are allowed to say if something is safe or not, regardless of whether or not it is. So Correct. It's like, because I say so, so it shall be written, so it shall be done type of situation?
If it's not been proven that it's harmful, and let's make sure we're all aware of this. If we're waiting on studies, and I'll say this even with supplements, if we're waiting on studies to come out and say, clearly this is safe or this is harmful or this is beneficial, unless you have big money food or big money pharma behind it to run that study, who sees the benefit of having possibly a patented product, no one's going to run that study, right? If someone says, I'm just going to pull something out of thin air, I'm going to intentionally not use science behind it. Magnesium is good for this. Who's going to benefit from that?
Whoever makes magnesium.
And anybody does, right? No one has a proprietary access to that. So if we're waiting on this magic study, when we've saw small publications that say, oh, magnesium helps with this, whether it helps with sleep or whether it helps with whatever, and then you're going to have somebody on the back end who say, there's no studies that prove that, you're wasting your money. Well, but if it's pennies on the dollar and you understand the risk, why would you not maybe give that a try, right? So if we flip it around and say, well, I'm waiting for a study to say this is harmful, who's motivated to run that study? There's no money to be made from it. Only the people that are against big food, and they're fighting a big dollar game that, they're going to a gunfight with a spork.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it just doesn't make sense. The funding's not there.
What is, I guess, just so mind-boggling to me, and we've been talking about this the entire time. Food and eating is not complicated. At its core, it's actually not complicated.
Right.
And there are some very simple guidelines that have been around for a very long time. And the blue zone studies have really kind of enhanced those findings, right? The blue zone study, look at the people who not only live the longest, but here's the thing that matters. They have the highest quality of life for the longest amount of years.
Right.
So these are people that are 100, but they're volunteering their time at 100. They're walking. They're right. Like, you're living life at 100. And you look at the people who live in these blue zones. What are they doing? They're eating more organic vegetables. They're having less animal meat, so to speak. They're moving their bodies. They're staying connected in community, and they're aligned with their purpose. Right. And I hear this all the time. Like, eat food, eat more plants, eat things that don't have an ingredient list, right? So it's an avocado, or it's a shrimp, or it's a carrot, or it's a chocolate, whatever, piece of whatever it is. But we ourselves, and society and marketing and all these things, they want to keep it complicated. They want to keep us guessing. They want us to keep thinking that we're doing it wrong and that they have the solution for us. And the solution has been manufactured. The solution is an ultra processed food or something that has been made out of lots of other things to be highly palatable, to be addictable, to be craveable, to taste great, to keep us stuck in this loop of feeling confused.
Right. It's a multifactorial problem, and there's a lot of different components. And so let me give you an example. This goes all the way back to the Farm Bill. And in the Farm Bill, basically, and I'm going to simplify it for listeners, but the Farm Bill is basically was put in place to protect farmers, a component of that. So let me give you a scenario. If you're a farmer and you're providing for your family, if you grow watermelon, if you grow strawberries, if you grow fruits or vegetables, and you have a bad season, a bad crop, a drought, whatever that may be, if you have no product to sell, you don't make any money. If you don't make any money, you don't pay the bills, right? But in the Farm Bill, farmers are incentivized to grow corn and soy. But only about, and I don't quote me perfectly, but only about 10 to 20% of that corn and soy is used, for example, let's just talk about the corn, is used for corn. Like corn on the cob or
canned corn.
Canned corn.
Single ingredient corn.
Right. Now, we won't count what's used for, alcohol and things like that. The rest, it's all for ultra processed foods. So if you're a farmer and you say, hey, the government has asked you to grow corn. But the good news is if things go bad, you're always going to get paid. Yeah. Well, what are you going to do? You're going to protect your family, right? So why is it that someone can make a package of Oreos, look at all the different ingredients in the Oreos, package it, create this product that's not even a real food, and how can we sell that cheaper than if you went to the farmer's market? Well, the Farm Bill has a role in that. It has a role in why that is so affordable compared to Whole Foods as well. Now, That doesn't fix the problem immediately for price. And I'll be honest with you, I will argue with anybody anymore that you can eat fast food cheaper. The way prices are right now, you can't eat fast food cheaper for the most part. It's easier. There's no question about it. It's quicker. There's no question about it. But at some point, we have to decide, how much do we prioritize us, our bodies, and our health? And I try to tell people, when you think of the idea of eating, what is food really for? And I'm not saying there's a right or a wrong question or answer to this, but what do you think food is really for? How would you all perceive it? Like, number one priority?
Fueling my body.
Yeah. And I think we would all agree that that's the primary role. It doesn't mean we can't get enjoyment from food, and please don't take it that way. But the number one thing is to fuel our body. So I think the first place we have to start is flip that package over. How many things in this food have a nutritional component to it? It's providing nutrition. It's providing macronutrients. It's providing vitamins. Okay, there's a bunch of other stuff in there that doesn't provide that. Why do you think they put it there? Shelf life? Sure. Longevity. But there's reasons behind why that stuff is in there.
Yeah.
There's a strategy, or else why would they waste the money and the resources and the time to put it in there? And that doesn't mean that it gets banned, but it now puts the decision in the consumer's hands to say, what are they trying to get out of this?
Again, we talk about this often in BariNation. We have a weekly support group on emotional eating, because I think a lot of us listening or watching this, your first reaction would be, I eat to comfort myself, or I eat to get through stress. I eat because it connects me to family, right? So people's reasons for food absolutely vary throughout life. And I know, Nat, you and I have done a lot of work to make that transition from food is nutrition, food fuels me, because before surgery, our answer would have been very different. Right. And I think as you start to have a conversation with yourself and with your care team and with who you want to be as a human, this conversation does have to come up, because food does connect us to family. It is cultural. It's all of these things. It can be soothing. It can be enjoyable. It's all of those things, but it's the order in which they happen in our life. And I know Nat and I can personally speak to this. When we did the work to make the switch to, no, food is nutrition number one. And then you start asking yourself, what does my body actually need to survive? What is really going to fuel it? What is going to make it feel good? How am I going to get to that place of longevity? Then you do start wondering, is what I'm eating having an impact on what I'm feeling and the success that I'm having? But you also have to wrestle with that question of, why am I consuming this piece of food? There's plenty of times that I'll pick up something, Cadbury egg, and I'm like, I'm not consuming this because it's healthy for me. I'm consuming this because you fill in the blank.
Right.
But that's the work.
And I think the thing that's always been so difficult for people to wrap their head around, people who suffer from any type of food addiction, and by no means do I think everybody who struggles with obesity has a food addiction. It plays a role for some, absolutely. But here's the thing, what's so hard, we've talked about this before, I think, but what's so hard is, if you have an addiction to alcohol or drugs, you can stop. I mean, it may not be easy, but it's not something you have to survive. The tricky thing with food is something you have to survive. So how about we redefine things? How about some of the things we're eating isn't really food, and some of the things we're eating is? Because what we've done is we've bundled everything that we're able to put in our mouth and chew up and ingest, we've called that food. Well, maybe, and then it gets really gray of like, well, I have to have this to survive. Yeah, but what if we take something like an Oreo? That's not food. It's a bundle of chemicals is all it is. It is ultra processed. There's nothing natural about that. And we call that, okay, that's not food, but food in the form of, even let's go to sweets, natural dark chocolate with no added sugars or anything like that. Now that's a gray area, but let's take it further. An apple, a strawberry, a banana, an orange, all those things whole, that's food, right? And you do need things like that to survive. And I promise you, if people eat primarily those things, they will have an easier time controlling how much of those things they eat. I am here to tell you, of 19 years of doing this, I have yet to meet a person who can honestly say, I struggle with an addiction to whole foods. And that doesn't mean you may not crave things that are whole foods, but and that takes us to that term that, I'll be honest with you, makes my head spin, that has become so popular over the past few years, of food noise. And the food noise was not invented by the drug companies. I'm not even going to give them that kind of credit, but it was brought up by a dietitian years and years ago. I mean, you could call it cravings, you can call it food noise, but the drug companies have definitely taken it and run with it. Okay. And every online compound weight loss drug company has taken it and run with it and talked about quieting the food noise. We hear patients talk about it all the time. Here's the question I always ask is, very rarely do people say they eat a steak and say, I want another one. I mean, I might want one at my favorite steak place because it tastes good, right? I can't get it in there, right? But I'm like, oh man, that was good. But usually I have to stop before I finish it. Very rarely do we want that extra avocado or that third apple if we've even eaten two. So, but we want more ice cream. We want more cookies. We want more cake. We want more, all these things. We want more cereal. Man, when I was in college, I could have eaten a box of cereal, probably did, right? Even if it was supposed to be healthy. So I don't believe there's food noise. I believe there's chemical noise. But we have to remove the precipitating factor to quiet the noise. And my question is if we had a good friend who was addicted to cocaine, do we think it would be a good solution to say, you know what, John, I'm going to ask you to just do cocaine once a week. Let's keep it in moderation, but I'm going to give you an injection so you don't crave cocaine the other 6 days of the week. No, we would say you have to stop it. And you may need mental health support. You may need other types of counseling. We may need to replace it with doing other things for a dopamine release that are healthier for you. But you have to take away the thing that you are craving that turns on those signals. And so I'm not saying that we can't have things in moderation, but I'm here to tell you, I believe there are some people that at this point in their life can't have certain things in moderation if they want that noise to quiet. And it's not a shot to the meds, but when I hear someone say, I want to take the med because it quietens my noise, the first question I ask is, noise from what? And are you willing to give up the noise maker? And let's give yourself some time to see if you truly need a shot to quiet the noise, or you just need to remove the precipitating factor that's causing it.
And I'm so glad you brought this up, because this is something that I've been thinking for a long time. When I don't eat or don't rely on protein bars, protein shakes, and this is, I mean, I don't like protein shakes anyway, but when I'm like, oh, maybe I should supplement with more protein shakes to hit my protein goals. When I do that with bars or shakes or whatever, I crave more. I'm not a sweets person, but I do crave cookies and chocolate, and like that stuff triggers me hardcore. Yeah. That is where my food noise or my brain just instantly goes to, I need more. And when I'm really focused on the whole foods, right? Like I would say 80 to 90% of the time, because of my chronic illness, I just don't really eat. And I'm talking chronic illness on top of obesity, because this is also a chronic disease, right?
Absolutely.
But when I'm focused on like, I don't want to have a flare up, I don't want to feel like crap and like I can't do anything. I'm eating whole foods, I'm getting protein in, I'm eating bananas and grapes and, all of that stuff. I don't even think about candy or cake or any chips. Like, I'm just not even thinking about it.
Yeah.
And so just listening to you talk about it's, I still think that, part of it is a food noise because of how long, right, that we have had this disease messing with our brains. But I think also at the same time, it is the foods that we're consuming, whether or not they're marketed to be high protein or to help us on our health journeys. It affects me for sure.
Absolutely. And when I hear people say you can have these things in moderation, I don't think that's a blanket statement that you can say to everybody. You can have these in moderation, but like there are some people that can't, because if they do, and then they want to go and take a shot to quiet the noise, I'm sorry, that doesn't make any sense. And listen, I believe you all know, at least you all know, maybe some of your listeners may not believe this after this statement. There's nobody that is more advocate for people who battle with obesity than myself, who has more empathy for people who battle with this than myself. But being honest, that doesn't mean that we are not an advocate or we don't have empathy. And I think at some point we have to be honest with ourselves and say there are just some things that some people can't have in moderation if they want these signals to go away. And to me, it makes no sense for someone to say, I need a medicine for food noise, but I'm not willing to give up the thing that's causing the noise. That is insanity to me. It really, really is. And you know, I did a interview for Newsweek magazine some time ago when the last administration started talking about covering the GLP medications, you know, with you know, for Medicare, you know, the government covering these. And I said, look, I'm all for everybody getting access to this. But if we just throw a medicine out there and we don't get to the root of the problem and our food problem, we have just made Big Pharma's day. We have perpetuated a chronic disease, and it is no different than if years ago, instead of blowing up big tobacco, we said, we're going to leave big tobacco alone, but we're going to come out with more and more and more powerful chemotherapy agents for lung cancer. We're not going to impact how it starts or what's precipitating the problem, but we're just going to continue to get stronger and thicker and more therapeutic Band-Aids. And obesity is a complex disease. There's no doubt about it. But Big Pharma wants this to stay a chronic disease. That's how they make their money. And so if we just perpetuate the problem and we don't get to the root of it, and I think sometimes people say, well, food is so hypothetical, like it's not like a magic pill or it's not a magic injection. So I don't think people believe it. You know, it's like, you know, family doctors for years would look at a parent when they bring their kid in and say, you know what, it's not bacterial, it's viral to get better. But eventually the mom would get frustrated and she'd go to somebody else to get the antibiotic because she thought that's what would fix the problem. And then they end up giving in like, well, I'm losing patience. I gotta stay busy. So I'm going to give the consumer what they want. I think we got to be really careful about that. Our bodies are nourished or harmed by what we put in them. So I think it's the person's choice, but we have to be honest and continuing to cover up a problem without being willing to change some of the behaviors that are causing the problem. To me, I just don't think makes sense.
If you guys could hear the conversation that I'm having with myself up here, you would think that I'm crazy.
And I did a little experiment with myself. I'll be honest with you, because I try to put myself through these things. So I grew up in the South, right? So sweet tea is a thing. And I've stopped drinking sweet tea my mom will make sweet tea like on a holiday and I might have a glass because that's just kind of one of the things that she would make. But I haven't had an issue with sweet tea forever. But now I go to a nice restaurant, my drink of choice is unsweet tea, and I'd put artificial sweetener in it. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to try something because throughout the course of a meal, I'd go through 6 glasses probably because, they constantly fill it up, and as it gets halfway down, if you're a good server, you're going to bring another glass. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to stop doing this. I'm going to drink unsweet tea, but I'm just going to remove the artificial sweetener. I'm not going to change what I'm drinking. I'm just not going to put the chemical in it because unsweet tea, that is not an ultra processed food, right? It has no artificial sweeteners in it. Lemon, some unsweet tea, and some ice. Since I've done that, and it took me a couple weeks to get used to it. Since I've done that, I had dinner yesterday with my parents for Easter. We went to a nice steak restaurant. I had 1 glass. We sat there for over 2 hours. It's one of these long dinners. 1 glass. I drank some of my water. I had 1 glass. I didn't crave anything else because that reaction that we get from that causes us to crave more. It is proven. I mean, we know this. They've done MRIs on people when they have these chemicals in their food. They know the reaction from it. And again, I'm not telling people that artificial sweeteners cause weight gain directly because there's no calories in them. But if it causes me to also get dessert, if it causes me to eat something later that evening because I'm drinking and I'm craving these things, then in the end, I'm going to eat other things like you said, Natalie, and you will gain weight, whether it's directly or indirectly. And that's happening. And I get really frustrated when some of these supposed obesity experts say, your Diet Coke is not causing you to gain weight. Well, directly, it's not. But you have to be aware if you're one of those people that are susceptible to that triggering reactions to ultimately eating other poor choices throughout the course of the day.
I always think in my brain when I hear something like that, I'll say, okay, it might not have any calories in it, whatever, but is that additive going to cause you to be inflamed? And is your inflammation going to make you not feel great? And then are you not going to want to move? And then are you going to feel bad that you're not moving? And then is that going to kick you into a shame cycle? Like, these are the conversations I have in my head, right? So yeah, sure. That 0 calorie sweetener might not do anything for you in the moment, but it could start a chain reaction that leads you to making decisions that would eventually impact your overall health and your weight.
Yeah.
So I get that. And the thing that I struggle with, and I know many of us, if you're listening or watching, you're probably going to know what I'm saying. I go to the all or nothing thing, right? Because it's like, so if I got to cut out all this, then, oh my God, that just seems too overwhelming. But I can also say to myself, well, if there's no evidence of this, then I'm not doing it. Then it's not really proven yet, right?
Absolutely. You can find a study to support or go against anything that you want to be the truth.
Anything. And now that I have really been paying attention to my all or nothing mindset and where it impacts my life, I'm starting to understand this. So the question that I have been asking myself once I realize I'm doing this is, okay, but what if it helps a little? What if it makes a little bit of a difference? Or what if you try it? What if I just try it for a day, a week, a month, whatever, and just see what the hell happens?
Right.
There is nothing wrong with that. And the older that I get and the more health things that I encounter and the more frustrating my disease of obesity has become, I really have started asking myself these questions. And I'm looking at my family history. All of my great grandparents passed at 99 and they all passed doing things that they loved. They got there for a lot of different reasons, but I know one of the reasons is because of the food that they were eating. And they were cultural whole foods that they made themselves. Very rarely did they consume a food that had a barcode. It's just true, right? And while that's not the 100% picture of how they all got to 99, I think it's a part of it. And so when I step back, right? And it's like, why would I deny myself the ability to have a chance at having such a long life like them? When I actually am in control of this, I can make the decision about what I'm choosing to consume, how I move my body, what I'm thinking, how I'm interacting, but why not just try it? Or why not consider that maybe some things that I'm doing aren't so helpful?
And why would we be willing to, and again, I want to be very careful and I want to say this before I make this next statement. We give anti-obesity medications to patients when the indication is there. I'm not anti that. I think it's become something that's been very severely abused, and I don't blame the patient. I blame the people and what they're promoting them for and how they're doing it. But if we know people that have sacrificed financially to find ways to afford these medications, but sometimes those same people have not been willing to sacrifice making changes in their diet that may have prevented them from needing that. And that's not saying diet and exercise. My goodness, we've talked about that forever. I'm talking about the sources of your nutrition. Giving up those crutches that you really think that I'm just going to have to try to do that in moderation. If that's not working, what would happen if we just get rid of some of these things? And here's the thing. I think people on a wellness journey and a weight loss journey would have to be a lot less obsessed with macronutrients if they just focused on whole foods. Now, you have to hit your protein goals. You absolutely do. And protein's not a weight loss drug. Protein is so you maintain your muscle mass, and maintaining your muscle mass allows your metabolism to run higher, and that keeps that number that is your breaking point from getting too low to where it's almost impossible to create a deficit or stay even to. But what if you just focused on hitting your protein goals in whole foods throughout the course of the day? So what if you eat some fruit? So what if you eat some fat? Let's just see what happens. Mm-hmm. I promise you, that is a much better way to start than for you to say, I'm going to only eat 1,200 calories, and it's going to come from this frozen meal and this protein potion and this little, I'm going to get a dessert, but it's only 90 calories and doing all this thing. I promise you, not obsessing over those macronutrients except for hitting your protein goals in whole foods, the longevity of that, number one, it's a lot easier to be compliant with that. And number two, I believe that will end up proving much more productive than the alternative.
Mm-hmm.
I am feeling so validated right now because this is something I've worked very hard on since having my surgery, especially in the last year. I lead several things in the BariNation support community. We get on the podcast. I get asked all the time, how many calories do you eat? How many what is protein, carbs, fat? And I said, I don't count calories, and I just make sure I hit my protein, and that's it.
Right. And you know what? And Natalie, if you feel like you're not accomplishing what you want to accomplish and you're not seeing the progress, then you can stop and say, okay, maybe I'm getting my protein, but I'm not getting it in the best sources. Maybe I'm getting a lot of extra stuff with it. And then you can reevaluate that. But I promise you, the best foundation is eating a whole food diet. I literally now in my classes every week tell people, if you could take one bit of advice, base your food on whole food. Sometimes you may need a protein drink or a protein shake or a protein bar to supplement that. But you have to be very careful if that is going to cause you to fall into those habits of needing more things because of how it triggers you, how you respond to what's in that food, right? Mm-hmm. And ideally, I would much rather them get it from whole food sources, especially people who are more susceptible to those cravings or to the noise. And it's alarming to me that what many would call very well-respected obesity specialists who are on social media, who are just against this whole, idea. They want to talk about that's a bunch of crap. You can have it in moderation. And I'm like, how can you mislead people like that? We know what these foods do. And if I hear one more person, obesity specialist, try to cite the lack of data, I'm going to just can't pull my hair out. But you know what I'm saying, because we're not going to have that data. There's no one that is financially motivated to publish that data, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it just doesn't make sense. And Food Fight USA and Todd, his favorite statement, it's so true. He said, it's not you, it's the food.
Mm-hmm. Which is making more and more sense as we have this conversation.
Yeah. And, I think unfortunately, and we're not going to get political on here, but I think unfortunately people are getting very, their views changed because of whose mouth it comes out of. This is a nonpartisan issue. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
This is not red or blue or middle. This is a humanity issue. And anybody who wants to make that any more than it is, they are just creating an agenda for themselves.
This topic has been in public discourse for a very long time, a very long time.
Right.
So this isn't surprising to me. This isn't necessarily new information. I grew up around my dinner tables talking about this with my family. And I remember this being a topic of conversation as I was going up through every administration that I have lived through.
Mm-hmm.
I think what has changed now is, well, obviously a lot of things, but more and more people are talking about obesity. More people are actively seeking out treatment for obesity. And that kind of naturally leads people to go, well, why am I struggling with this in the first place? And it's multifactorial. It's all of this. It's all the things that we've talked about. But when you do step back and you look at how has life changed? How has the world changed? How has, our modern way of living, how is it different from my great grandparents? It's monumental, but so are the diseases and the issues that people are facing.
Right.
So it's top of mind because it can be top of mind, and honestly, great, because now we have technology, we have discourse, we have the ability to think critically about these things that humans are experiencing. Nobody wants to have the disease of obesity. Nobody wants to be living this way. Nobody wants to be thinking about food constantly. Nobody wants to be limited in what they can do with their kids.
Right.
And the solution is going to be multifactorial, just like the diseases. But if this one piece of the puzzle could help you treat the disease and be better holistically, that is a puzzle piece that you should spend some time on because you are in control of it.
Yeah.
You.
Absolutely. I think there's been a lot of discussion recently about foods on, 60% of our diet is ultra processed foods, roughly, in the United States. 60%. Yeah. And there's so much data out there that shows a link to the rise in food addictions with the rise in ultra processed foods, the rise in obesity with the rise in ultra processed foods. We could go on and on and on. There's a lot of conversation in the public eye about the SNAP programs, or the food stamp programs, and the soda companies, and it being, this is not saying that someone who's on a SNAP program shouldn't be allowed to drink soda. I think it's a travesty that we're supposed to be providing a program to people who are struggling to afford nutrition and giving them something that has zero nutritional value. No one with any education, as much as this microphone, could say that there is any nutritional value in a can of soda, diet or full sugar. There's nothing nutritional about that. So if we created a program to provide affordable nutrition and supplement that for those who are struggling to get it on their own, why would we be allowed to give them something that's not giving them the thing that it's supposed to be providing, which is nutrition?
Yeah.
Those people can still choose to buy. They don't buy all their food that way. They can choose to buy that if they want to. It's their right if they want to do that. But I think that it's criminal that we are, because for some of those people may not know, well, they're giving this to me. It must be okay for me. No, we need to say it's not okay. And there's a lot of money tied up in that. And there's a lot of people's in each other's pockets because of that. But we need to call a spade a spade. And I think that we're doing a disservice to the most vulnerable population who are already struggling with chronic disease and struggling with their financial issues as well. And now we're giving them something that has no nutrition at all.
It seems ironic, just as what you're saying, right? That a nutritional program is providing people with food that might not be so nutritional.
And maybe make them want more. Yes. Yeah.
All right, my friends, we're out of time for this. The three of us are going to continue the conversation. I have 3 burning questions that I'm going to ask you in this bonus episode, and I'm excited for this. So if you are a member of BariNation or if you're a patient of Dr. Smith's, you can get access to that bonus episode. But Dr. Smith, I guess 2 questions to kind of wrap us up. What are you hoping people are leaving this conversation with, and what resources would you like to point them to learn more?
Yeah, I think the one thing I want them to leave with is just transparency. Ultimately you can make those choices. But here's what I would say. Be well informed about those choices. It is so vital that you understand what you're putting in your body and the impact it's going to have on your body. And I would also say the way you eat in your 40s is how you will be in your 80s. The way you exercise in your 40s is how you will function in your 70s and 80s. When you become 70 and you say, I want to clean things up, it's usually too late. Prepare now. This is the only body that we've been blessed to have. And cherish it. Take care of it. Listen, I by no means have said that I've always treated my body like I should have, but we can only expect out of it what we put into it. I think our connection to food psychologically, mentally, and even physically is directly related to what is in our food. And I think we need to start being honest with ourselves and deciding what is really food and what is not food. Mm-hmm. And I think it's easier to wrap your head around that. And finally, just give it a try. Give me 1 month where you try to eat 80% of your diet from food that essentially has one ingredient in it. Give it a try. See what happens. Journal how you feel. Journal your sleep. Journal all those things. And maybe you have to start small. But start. I promise you, it is the foundation of how you can find a way to eat for the rest of your life that will sustain your health and wellness.
Awesome. If people want to learn more, where can they go?
Food Fight USA is a great website where you can go get a lot of information. It's a nonprofit organization. Get involved. Understand that they keep you updated on states that are passing laws to remove ultra-processed foods from schools, remove dyes from foods, all those things. Here's what I would challenge you. Find it interesting. Research for yourself. Get lots of information. There's a lot of people out there that kind of scare people away because they say this person disagrees with them and don't listen to them. Don't take my word for it. Don't take Natalie or April's word for it. Learn for yourself. Mm-hmm. What harm can it do for you to learn a little bit about it and base your nutrition on whole foods? But Food Fight USA is a great place to start. And I encourage everybody to go check out that website.
Awesome. We also in BariNation, we have it's a 7-day and then it's a 14-day kind of self-guided mini course on ultra-processed foods and gut health, what they are, how our body utilizes them, and how they could impact our health and our gut health. So if that's something you're interested in, that's available for you in the community if you are a member there. But we'll make sure that all of these resources, you guys, are linked in the show notes. So if you'd like to dive a little bit deeper, click open that show description, and you can find it all there. The other thing that I would love to ask you, if you have a question floating around in your head that you would like Dr. Smith to answer, you want us to revisit or come back to, leave that question as a comment in this episode. So if you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening, drop us that comment or send us an email, because we want to know what questions you have about this topic so that we can dive a little bit deeper with you and continue to learn about this topic that is forefront of our mind for really good reasons. So make sure that you let us know if you have any of those questions. Dr. Smith, thank you so much for joining us today. As always, the conversation was on fire and on point. We appreciate you.
Yep, my pleasure.
That wraps up another empowering episode of the BariNation podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, keep the conversation going by joining the BariNation membership community, where you can attend live support events, access on-demand resources, and find a caring community.
Join us at barination.mn.co. If you found this podcast valuable, help us produce it by becoming a $5 monthly supporter at barinationpodcast.com.
And just remember, at the end of the day, you've got this, we've got you, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.